What's going on, everybody? I'm Patrick from POWLAX, and in this video we're going to be going over partner passing. Now, like wristers, this is an extremely simple drill, and this video is probably pretty long, and that's because we're going to go in depth into all of the different techniques and skills that you can have players do, which is what makes partner passing so dynamic. If you'd like to follow along with a PDF, you can use this link here up in the corner. It'll take you to patreon.com/POWLAX, and this PDF will be a part of the drills tier, which is just $1 a month. Also, if you want to skip ahead to some of these techniques, I'm going to put the time frames up here so that you can just kind of scroll through the video and get to exactly the parts that you want to watch. So now let's talk about how we want to set up and run the drill. It's a very simple drill. Basically, you're going to have two lines. The two lines are going to move down the field, and they're going to pass back and forth to each other. Now, within the box, you have two goalies. The best way that you should run it is you should just put the lines on either side of a goal, and then they're just going to come down the field together, and they're going to pass the ball back and forth. Now, once we get into some of the more advanced skills like the wind-up dodging and some other things, another aspect of this drill is that because you will have players use a specific hand, say a trail hand, it will teach players the idea that if I'm on this half of the field, I want to be right-handed so that when I shoot, I can wrap the ball to the middle of the field and have a better shooting angle with the eyes that are in my stick. Now, you don't always have to do this, and some of the very first things that we're going to go over will be on the field, and they won't have that emphasis to it, but it's a great way to teach players that we want to be right-handed on this side of the field, left-handed on this side of the field, so that when we are shooting, our sticks are to the middle and they see more of the goal so that we're going to score more goals. Now, a couple things about how players are going to be moving down the field. It's not like the first two players are going to get all the way down and the next players are going to start. Once the first two players get about 5 yards ahead, the next set of players will go. You can even really have them start once there's 2 yards of space, depending on which techniques you're doing. But so if it's something that requires a little more space, have the next line wait a little longer, but everyone's going to be moving down the floor together. Then once they get to this end of the floor, they're going to get back in line and they're going to come back the floor. And so this is another aspect that I really like about the drill. Do not have players switch lines once they get to the opposite side, because as they came down the floor, say we're doing sticks outside, these players will all be left-handed, but as we come back, they're all going to have to go right-handed. So if you're using this with more of a field emphasis, it really helps to make sure you're getting players touches with both hands. On this day, we were practicing a little bit later, which is why the shadows are so long and so many balls are being dropped. But notice how as the players move down the field, the players on the left side are right-handed, and then as they come back, they will be left-handed. Now, if you have a ton of players, you can also run this where you put two sets of lines, one on the left side, one on the right side, and you run the drill like this. So this is the exact same drill, just run with two sets of players on each side of the goal. The only thing that I don't like about this is it gets rid of the possibility of shooting at the end of each rep. But with so many players, you really can't just run one set of players. Another little added way that you can run this drill is once players get down to the ends of the drill, you can actually have them just wide turn to the outside, and then the same players are going to be throwing the ball up over the players who are coming back in the middle, so that you can get some reps throwing long passes. So keep your eyes on these two players. Notice how once they get to the end, they wide turn to the outside and begin throwing the ball up over to each other. Now, if we had a lot more players, there would still be players moving through the middle of the field that they would be throwing over. Now, if you have a young team, this might not be the best idea, especially if they're not competent throwing balls over other players. And odds are, even if they are, some of these players in the middle are going to get hit with some of the passes. But it's a really great way for players to have to look through other players coming through the middle to a target on the opposite side and throw the ball up over to them. So those are the basics on how we're going to run the drill. Now we're going to go into a bunch of the techniques. So the first set of techniques we're going to go over is sticks outside. And so that basically means if my partner's over there, my stick is to the outside, we're going to run up field and have to turn and throw across our body and then receive the ball across our body. It's pretty simple and it doesn't give players a lot of trouble. The next basic skill that we have is sticks inside, and this one is a little bit tougher for players. And so as players are throwing, they need to make sure that they are turning their torso to the inside, getting their stick up to their collarbone, and then throwing sideways. So some players, they won't really turn their torso because they're moving this way, and throwing, they kind of just come backwards, and instead of throwing it over the top, they can kind of throw it from the side a little bit. Now, as far as catching the ball with sticks inside, we want to make sure that players have their stick in front of their body, not trailing behind them. Because if I'm moving a specific direction, you pretty much infer that I'm running away from a defensive player. And so, say we're clearing, if a player's on my back and someone's throwing a pass up to me, I don't want to have my stick behind me where the defender might get it. I want to have it out in front of me. And so with this technique, a lot of players like to try to snap the ball. They like to kind of put their stick here and grab it and come around. So the reason why players like to snap and bring the ball back like this is because they're not quite used to readjusting their hands. So to combat this, what I have players who are just learning do, I like them to kind of just get up to their cradle position, cradle over to here, and then learn how to accept the pass here and then cradle around. Eventually their hands will just catch on and they'll be able to track a ball forward, accept it, curl their hand, and come over. But it's very important that they learn how to accept the ball from these different angles, and they're not always right here. Another one of the things to look out for as players are kind of accepting over the shoulder and catching with their sticks inside is that some players will put their hands kind of across their body like this and they'll cross over. We don't want them to do that. We want their bottom hand in their pocket just right here so that as they're running they can just accept it and come through. So now we're going to get into shuffle quick sticks. And the first thing I'm going to talk about with shuffle quick sticks is that it does not have to be fast at first. We don't really care how quickly the ball comes into and out of this stick. A lot of players think that, and they're the kids who end up trying to bat the ball back as if they had a tennis racket in their hands. The way that you teach quick sticks well is you tell them just no cradling whatsoever, so that as a player accepts the ball, regardless of if he accepts it here or here perfectly, he just wants to make sure that he accepts it, comes up, and then throws it without cradling the ball. So this shuffle quick stick drill is one of the best ways for brand new players to learn how to pass and catch effectively, because on the catch, they have to accept the ball, they're not allowed to cradle, and then they have to get it up to their collarbone so that they can throw it effectively. Now, as players progress, they'll be able to quick stick from all over, but the key is they need to learn how to accept the pass, and they need to learn how to throw the ball from their collarbone. And because they're not allowed to cradle, it really puts a lot of emphasis on how they accept the pass and how they throw the ball. Notice how subtle a cradle can be while we're doing shuffle quick sticks. As the ball hits this player's stick, he barely turns his stick to cradle it back up to his collarbone. We would want to get rid of this and make him accept the ball cleanly, pull it to his collarbone, and pass. Here's a great example of a player accepting the ball, pulling it to his collarbone, and passing. The next aspect of shuffle quick sticks is that this is going to be the first one where we really emphasize which side of the field we want to be on. So what we're going to say is make sure you have your stick in your trail hand, because as this player is coming down the floor, he should be lefty, and now he's left-handed, it's trailing him, and now if he did accept a pass and have to get the shot off quickly, he can then have his stick to the middle of the field, which gives him more goal to shoot at. Same thing for the player on the right. He will be trail hand here, and now they are throwing their quick sticks. Notice how as this player accepts the ball, his hands are very soft, which will set him up to shoot much quicker than if he had to cradle a couple of times. Also, because he's using his trail hand, his stick is to the middle of the field, giving him more goal to shoot at. Our final basic technique that we're going to go over is ground ball pass. And so we run ground ball pass for a couple reasons. First, if you're in a game and you scoop up a ground ball, you're never going to roll the ground ball again. So this really helps players to focus on picking the ball up, getting it to their collarbone, and then moving the ball. The next thing it does is it emphasizes part of our offensive and defensive philosophy, where if we do pick up a ground ball, we want to make sure that we move it twice, because if there's a ground ball, say over here, all of our attention is on it. So whether we're attacking the goal or defending the goal, once we pick it up, if we're attacking it, we want to move it twice to open space and then try to attack from there. If we're defending the goal, we want to make sure we have support and we move it back, and then we are able to clear from that position. Now we're going to get into our wind-up dodging series, and this is one of the elements of partner passing that makes it such a dynamic drill and is one of the reasons why teams will use it every single day. So while we're doing our wind-up dodging, we want to make sure that players on the right side are using their right hand, their trail hand, and the left side is using their left hand, also their trail hand. What we're doing by making players use their trail hand is imagining that there's a defenseman in the middle of the field, so that as they are winding up, it's as if a defenseman approached them to the top side, and now they are going to make their wind-up dodges as they come down the field. One of the great things about wind-up dodging is that it's one of the best ways to teach players how to dodge, because you're acting like you're going to be shooting, but then you are dodging, which is basically what any dodge is. I'm acting like I'm going to go left, and then I'm going right. So at this point, I'm going to skip around a little bit. We're going to cover the two types of dodges, and then we're going to go over a couple of different skills that you can use within these dodges. There are additional dodges you can do, but we're not going to cover them in this video. So the first thing that we have to cover with our wind-up dodging is that we have to look like we're going to shoot. Notice how this player has his weight loaded on his back foot, his eyes are up, he really looks like he's going to shoot, whereas this other player doesn't have his hands back far enough, his eyes aren't up on goal, and so he's kind of just going through the motions rather than really looking like he's going to shoot. The first dodge that we're going to talk about is a wind-up face dodge. So as a player winds up, he looks like he's going to shoot, and then as his weight transfers from his back foot to his front foot, he's going to pull the stick across his face and protect it on the opposite side of his body. Now, from this position, we can do a bunch of different things. We're going to cover that in a minute. The key here is that a player will pull the stick across their face as quickly as possible and then protect it on the other side of their body. Now, when you're doing this wind-up shovel pass, the first thing that players are going to do is they're going to cross over their hands. And we do not want them to cross over their hands because from this position, it's just too awkward. I can't really do anything. What I want to do is I want to pull my bottom hand back behind me so that from here, now I can throw a pass. I can do basically whatever I would be able to do on the natural side of my body. Now we're going to watch a few live highlights of players executing a wind-up face dodge in games. This first clip is of Rutgers. Watch how as the skip pass comes through, a player is approaching him. He winds up, face dodges, gets his stick back to the middle, and shoots. This next clip is from one of our Predators players, and watch how as he winds up, he freezes the defenseman and then face dodges past him, getting off a good shot. Now the next dodge that we're going to incorporate is a wind-up spin move. So now as the player winds up, once his weight shifts from his back foot to his front foot, now he's going to swing his back foot behind him, turning towards his stick, and then spin past the defensive player. One of the most important parts about a wind-up spin move is that as I wind up and I spin, I want to keep my stick on my shoulder, defended by my body, so that players cannot check it. A lot of players will leave their stick back behind them, or they will just spin like this, leaving my stick in the middle of the field where a defenseman will be. We'd like to have players spin to here, and then once the stick is on the outside, we want them to keep it there so that they keep their sticks protected. We're not going to switch hands here, but you can choose to have your players switch hands if you'd like to. As we were running our wind-up spin moves, we were having players practice a walk the dog, which is why our players aren't protecting their sticks on their top hand shoulder. Notice how as the players are walking the dog, they're not sticking their stick out until their body is between them and the imaginary defenseman in the middle of the field. Here's a great example of a wind-up spin move from a tournament last fall. Notice how he winds up, spins towards the head of his stick, and here he's going to switch hands before shooting to the top right corner. Now once players have completed these dodges, now we can incorporate a bunch of different types of passes and other techniques. So for our face dodge, we were doing a wind-up, face dodge, and a shuffle pass. Now with this shuffle pass, it's important that as players are winding up and coming over here, is that they protect their stick by keeping their stick away. And then as they are throwing the ball, we want them to start throwing the ball horizontally across the field rather than vertically up in the air. You can have your players do these shovel passes, whether it is a wind-up face dodge or a wind-up spin move. Now, as we were doing our wind-up spin moves, we were using a walk the dog. So as the player would wind up, he would then spin, and as his stick got to here, now he's going to hold his stick out to the side of him and walk the dog. Walking the dog is basically holding your stick out away from a defenseman using your bottom hand. And so as players were winding up, they'd execute their spin move, they would keep their stick away from where our imaginary defenseman is, and then from here, we would have them pull their stick back and throw it like it was on the inside. Now from this spot where we're walking the dog, we can also have them come back and throw a shovel pass, but I really like the emphasis on once we're in our walk the dog, getting it back across our face and throwing a pass. Now we're going to get into our advanced techniques, and although I've called them advanced, it's very important to know that 7 and 8-year-olds can pick up these techniques with a bunch of practice. So it's not like because they're advanced, we are not going to teach them to younger players. The bottom line is if you teach them to those younger players at earlier years, they'll probably catch on and be able to do them much better than if we wait till later years. One of the things that we like to do with these advanced techniques is, because we know that a lot of players aren't going to be using them with their off hands, we usually have the players either move forward down the field or backpedal down the field so that they can keep their stick in their strong hand. So let's say a righty is coming down this side, his stick will be to the outside and he will be going forward. But if a righty is in this line, he will be backpedaling. So the first one we're going to go over is a lever pass. And a lever pass is basically a pass that we're going to throw if a defenseman is defending our bottom hand. So the way you can think about it is, if my hand is across my body, I'm protecting with 2 hands on my stick, I'm going to leave this hand here and I'm just going to pull up on my stick. And so a couple of the things that are really cool about this pass is if my stick is across my body and it's almost like across my stomach on my body, if someone checks it here, it's not going to move my stick very much. So I can keep my stick here, it's protected. Even if someone hits it, it's not going to jar the ball loose, and now I can make my pass. Notice how as the players are moving down the field, their bottom hand does not move. They're just pulling their top hand up. And this is so that they do not have to pull their top hand up where it could be lifted by a defenseman. Notice how this player from Brown gets his pass off extremely quickly with defensemen all over his bottom hand. Now, had this player tried to pull his hands up and pass like normal, he probably would have had the ball taken from him. But because he uses this lever pass, he can get the ball out of his stick while the defensemen are all over his bottom hand. This next clip is of the same thing. Watch how quickly he gets the ball off once his bottom hand touches his stick, and he uses the lever motion to pass the ball to the player on the inside. And that takes us to behind the backs. The last advanced technique that we are going to cover here is a behind the back, and there are a lot of different ways that you can teach a behind the back. I'm going to show you one that a lot of coaches like to teach first, and then the way that I like to teach it. So the way that a lot of coaches like to teach it is they basically say to, almost get to this position, and then you're just going to hit your shoulder with your stick. Now, as players are doing this, a lot of times they'll start throwing behind the backs kind of way too far over here, so I like to teach it a little differently. I like to have players set up like they're going to shoot from here, and now they're just going to pull their top hand up to their neck. And the reason I like this is because if you're here and I'm wound up like this and I pull to my neck, the stick is staying vertical. We're not getting anything where it's coming side to side. Another one of the big things with these behind the backs is that we want to make sure that players aren't just kind of going like this and trying to throw them. We always want them to have their eyes on their target so that as they start to throw them, they are then able to correct where the ball goes. Because if they're not watching where they're trying to aim and seeing where the ball goes, they can't really fix where the ball was going. It just allows them to modify how they're throwing so that they can become more accurate. Notice as this player is coming down the field, his eyes are up on target as he throws his BTB. In this video, we have a great use of a behind the back pass. Notice how as he steps in and draws the defender, he uses almost a cradle motion, hits his shoulder with his stick, and throws a BTB to the player next to him. So those are all the techniques that we're going to cover in this video, but there are a ton more that you can run while you're doing partner passing, like having players cross and execute picks and slips and throw the ball, as well as doing little flip passes and around the worlds, all kinds of other things that you can do. But these are the main ones that I really like to run in my practices, and I hope that you can use them with your practices. Thank you for watching this video. Definitely let me know what you thought down in the comment section. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also, if you want to download the playbook PDF, you can use this link up here and go to patreon.com/POWLAX where you can get it. Have a good one. I will see you in the next video.